That this evening. But first, welcome to Old St. Andrews. Welcome to this speaker series program of the Jacksonville Historical Society on this still summer day in September. I am Alan Bliss. I'm CEO of the Jacksonville Historical Society. This organization was founded here in Jacksonville in May 1929. It is not just the oldest, but the only professional public history organization serving all the people of Jacksonville. We do that in the service of historical education. That's at the center of our mission, and we value historical education because it strengthens citizenship. If you know about the place where you live, you know something about it can be your house, your block, your neighborhood, your community, your state and country. If you know about that place, you know something about what came before, you're more invested in it psychically and intellectually, and if life favors you enough that way, financially as well. It strengthens citizenship and a sense of stewardship in the place that you live. That's the value of historic understanding and historic knowledge and education. We foster that in the local education system, in public programming such as this. We advocate for historic preservation where it makes sense to further the interests of the people of Jacksonville and its future. And history is not just about looking back. It's also about looking forward. This is 2022, the city's bicentennial year. We commemorated that anniversary this year, and we will continue to do that through the end of the year. But looking back at 200 years, reminds us, makes us aware that we stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us, right? We live in the spaces that we didn't create, they did. We occupy streets and use buildings that, for the most part, we didn't build, someone else did. We are the inheritors of a legacy of the people who came before us. And when you think about the past that way, it reminds us that we are the stewards of this city in the present moment. And that makes us responsible for the legacy that the generations who come after us will inherit and they'll occupy. And maybe they'll wonder why we did the things that we did in our present moment. But that can be their problem of history to unpack and understand. We do what we do thanks to support from a variety of sources. Thanks to the City of Jacksonville, the Cultural Council of Greater Jacksonville, thanks to a number of important corporate partners and foundations and generous philanthropists. We depend also on our members. And I hope there are some of you who are members of the Jacksonville Historical Society among us this evening. If you are not, we can swiftly remedy that condition with membership information that's available at the front table. We couldn't do these speaker series programs without the work of our staff and volunteers. Let me call attention to Jacksonville Historical Society Chief of Staff and Communications Director Kate Halleck. Thanks very much to her for all her efforts. And also, thanks to Merrill Museum House Coordinator Nancy Gandy, who has been custodian of the intoxicating beverages at the back table. She's keeping an eye on your consumption. Georgia Probanik is our librarian in red at the welcome table. Thanks to Georgia, and she is joined also by volunteer June Paula. Thanks to all of them for their work. So I've mentioned that we value history and that we emphasize its contribution to citizenship. The tagline of the Jacksonville Historical Society is one city, many stories. And is that not also relevant when you think about the work of genealogy? Genealogists are about packing and unpacking the stories of countless lives and how they come together and how they have shaped us in our present moment. I look forward to learning more from Carol Clay about that this evening. Carol is a native of Birmingham, Alabama. She and her husband moved to the Jacksonville area after his career in the Air Force to take up employment in Jacksonville. They settled in St. Johns County. And in St. Johns County, she went to work for the St. Johns County the school system, and she worked for them for 19 years as a peer professional, working at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. And since her retirement, she has been active with the Southern Genealogists Exchange Society. She joined them in 2014. She became a member of their board of directors, apparently almost instantaneously in 2015. And she has served on the board since then, holding a variety of positions, and she has been the board president of SGES since 2019. She is a knowledgeable, influential, effective, thoughtful, devoted, passionate advocate for genealogical research and for the work that her organization does. And we'll hear more about that from her. Please welcome Carol Clay.
Step stool here, because as you can tell, I'm vertically challenged. I don't tell people I'm short, I am vertically challenged. Okay. Yes, I am from the Southern Genealogy Exchange Society. Tonight, I would like to introduce you to our society, Southern Genealogists Exchange Society. We kind of knock that down to the initials, SGES, much easier to say. The society has an importance in the history of Duval County, even though I'm not a native of Jacksonville or Duval County or Florida. I love the history here. I love living here. We, like the Historical Society, preserve history through our collection. And I'm here tonight to tell you a little bit about that collection. This is a picture of Aurora Shaw. Aurora Shaw was the founder of the Southern Genealogists Exchange Society. She was a member of the Mormon Church. Her mother, on her deathbed, made her promise that she would continue the family research. And Aurora became so involved in that research that she took it upon herself to start a society in this city. The first thing she did was begin publishing a quarterly, and that was done from her home in 1957. After that, and those of you who picked up a packet today, you will find a quarterly from our society in your packet. That's for your pleasure reading. Enjoy it. I think you will find some really interesting stories and genealogy in there. The society itself was formed in 1964 and became a 501c nonprofit in 1967. So if you do the math, we've been in this city for 58 years. Wow. We are the original genealogy society for Jacksonville, Florida. I'm old school. I tap my nose. This gives you a location of where we are. We actually own a building, which is a rarity. And we're on Saturn Drive, which is located 1 block north of 103rd Street on the west side, between Blanding Boulevard and James Road. I'd really like to emphasize the fact that we own that building. It is paid for, which is phenomenal in itself. This society started in Aurora's house, then Aurora's garage, then it moved to several other buildings. It was actually downtown in the main public library for a while on Laura Street. And then this building was purchased and eventually paid for in full. There is not another genealogy society with their own building, with their own private collection, in a 300-mile radius of this city. That's I go travel a lot. I go to other genealogy societies, and it's wonderful because they do great work. But they depend on public libraries for their collection, and they're usually much smaller. One of the things that we're most proud of is we're a FamilySearch affiliate library. Now, if you do genealogy, you kind of know what that means. Most of us research with what FamilySearch or Ancestry.com. FamilySearch has records that you can go to online for free, but you can't get into all of their records. Many people travel to Salt Lake City to research their family because that's where all the records are kept. But we're one of 2 libraries in Duval County with this designation. The other site is the main public library here in town on Laura Street. And for those that use FamilySearch website, this allows them to access records that they cannot access from home. The only thing you have to do is bring your laptop, or you can use one of our computers and come to our building and be connected to our Wi-Fi system. And then you can research. We had a young lady do that about a year ago, and she had been trying to find her husband's family. His family was from Italy, and she couldn't find anything. She had searched all the engines that she could online, and she was able to get in those records and found his grandparents. This photo was taken inside our library in the front room. I have many more, but I chose not to use all of them tonight. This is just one that shows some of the books in our building. Our building contains over 6,000 books, maps, family histories, microfilm, microfiche, obituaries, quarterlies from 40 states, and some foreign countries. In the main section of our library, here are some of the titles that we carry: American Ancestry, General Military, Family History, Source Reference and How-To, which I'll talk about a little bit, Organization, Ship Passenger List, and Census books. Also, some more titles are African American Resources, State Books, Ethnic and Foreign, Quarterlies, Maps, Microfilm, and Microfiche, as I said. In the foreign book section, surprisingly, we have 370 books. These cover England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, Canada, Germany, Barbados, Cuba, and Jewish and Native Americans. This collection talks about our state books, and you'll notice that Florida, we have 1,490 books just on the state of Florida. We have 1,275 books on Georgia, which I know there are a lot of people that live in the Jacksonville area that are either from Georgia or have family in Georgia. Of course, we have North Carolina, 920. Those are our largest collections. But again, we have from about 47 of the states in the Union. And these topics include histories of counties. A lot of times we'll have county books, court records, property books, the birth, marriage, and death, cemeteries, early pioneers, state histories, and county histories. This is a short list of some of the Duval County books that we have of interest. But if you'll notice at the bottom of that list are the volumes of Pioneers of Florida's First Coast. The Pioneers of Florida's First Coast was compiled by the Southern Genealogist Exchange Society. They are two very large, big books. Florida's First Coast consists of Baker, Clay, Duval, Nassau, and St. Johns counties. Pioneers in these counties had to sojourn in the area prior to 1875. You got to start somewhere, and you got to have a cutoff somewhere, or it's never ending. Since history is events, and genealogy is the people who created those events, this book contains some of each. Some include pictures, and many contain interesting and amusing incidents, all combined to give us insight in how our ancestors lived, which isn't that history. Volume 1 was published in 1991, and Volume 2 was published in 2006. This slide is about our books and series of interest. This area is particularly important to people who are researching their immigration and their family, the different wars, and looking for documentation to join organizations such as the DAR, the SAR, the SCV, and the UDC. Two titles here under our source reference and how-to section. As you can see, we have quite a few in that, but that are really important when we're doing research that I particularly like using. The Guide to Cemetery Research and Tracking Your Life and Times, how to insert those historical facts with family history. Continuing in this source reference guide too, as you see there's many different things here. Weights, money, and other measures that were used for our ancestors is really a phenomenal little book. It's so interesting. Also, everything you need to know and how to find family history in newspapers. Many times when we can't find documentation in other areas, we go to newspapers. This is such a valuable source of information. And later in this program, I will tell you how that helped us unravel genealogy that we were researching. This is a picture of our vertical files. It's a hodgepodge. It contains an assortment of information. And as Forrest Gump's mother said, it's like opening a box of chocolate. You open those drawers, you never know what you're going to find in there. There is so much information. We have one entire drawer in this section that's devoted to Florida and numerous counties in Florida. The Duval County file is our largest file in this cabinet. In our collection, we also have many maps. This one we particularly love. It is a huge map. It is framed. It hangs on the wall in the main room of our library. And this is of Duval County in 1884. Listed here are some other maps of Florida. As you can see, we have quite a few maps. I just did a talk for the Clay County Historical Society recently, and one of the things that's kind of phenomenal to them is Fleming Island is one of their up-and-coming developments. We have the plot map for that before it was ever developed into subdivisions. You'll also notice at the bottom of the list we have a map of Duval County in 1898. This is a sample of some of our microfilm and microfiche. We also have other state titles, and we have a reader for our microfilm and microfiche. And of course, what's very interesting to Duval County would be the land ownership maps, the court probate and homestead exemptions and inventories, and as you can see, many other things. And of course, I have Clay County on here because I did several programs for them. We also carry Jacksonville City directories. When I first started this, I had no idea what was involved in genealogy. I, like many of you, had a friend that said, "Hey, Carol, we could really use some help at the library. Can you come do some filing?" I don't know why I didn't say no, but I said yes. And so here I am. One of the things I learned that I had no idea, I remember growing up, and you guys probably, a lot of you do too, having directories. You know, this was before cell phones. We all had these big directories. You set your little kids at the dinner table on the directory. You know, we used it for everything. The things that are listed in those directories are amazing to me. There's so much information. Not only is the resident's name and the address and street listed, many times their occupation is listed, the company or their employer, if they rent or own their home, and their spouse's name. What a wealth of history of your family. And if you're checking on roads that may have possibly changed, this is a great resource to go to, because maybe you have your family's name and it says a different address at a certain time period, and you can go back and check. When did that road name change? Which, you know, happens often too. Accessing our inventory. I told you what all we have in our inventory. That inventory is online. You go to our website, sgesjacks.org, and you can access our inventory, which is a big help, because if you're researching something and you know the name of a particular book or maybe a particular quarterly, you can look and see if we have it. Another really interesting fact that some of you that are from Jacksonville and been long-time residents may be familiar with, and that was the Blue Ribbon Cemetery Commission. This was during Mayor John Payton's term in office, and he and the City Council of Jacksonville in 2009 started this commission. Members of our society took on as a nonprofit helping with this commission. And the whole purpose of it was to identify abandoned and neglected cemeteries in Duval County. And if you're familiar with cemeteries, I'm from Alabama. A lot of my family is buried in very rural cemeteries. One of them, you literally have to drive through a pasture to get to. So to me, it's so important that cemeteries are kept up. There's such history there. And it's one of the things I worry the most about is what's going to happen to this cemetery with my grandmother that helped raise me is buried. But anyway, that was what it was for, was to identify those things. The two men pictured here are John Ferguson and Michael Lawson. They documented 81 cemeteries in Duval County. Now their job was to just document the neglected cemeteries and abandoned cemeteries. Their job was not to clean up those cemeteries. They were to help find people that were willing to do that. Scout troops. Mr. Brunson here is very involved in the Boy Scouts. They did that. There were other people that were already involved in the counties trying to keep those cemeteries, so they kind of coordinated with that. They didn't do the work, they just documented the conditions of those cemeteries, and I'll show you about what that will look like in a minute. But during this time, these two men were phenomenal people. John Ferguson especially, he is the one that got me started with this society. Filing, remember? But anyway, John decided, hey, we're out here at these cemeteries anyway. Let's spread them. Let's document every single grave with a headstone. And that's what he did. This information is so valuable, and we have used it over and over in the society because we get emails and phone calls from people all the time saying, can you help me find where my grandfather was buried? I know he died in Jacksonville, but I can't find where he was buried. So this helps us with the location of burial sites for those people needing answers. This slide shows you an example of the documentation of each cemetery. This particular one that was given to the City Council was on the Arlington Community Cemetery. You will notice that it gives you the address, the description of where it is. It was a historically black community known as Lone Star, listed of course in Jacksonville, Duval County. It gives you the size, approximately 1 acre, and the condition, poor, lots of debris, fenced, but gate was not locked. This was done on April the 13th of 2009. My personal favorite part here was the fact that John documented all those headstones, he and Michael. There is a composite of 12,471 names with birth dates, death dates, and burial locations in Duval County. This was done in those 81 cemeteries, and it was compiled by John Ferguson in October of 2014. He did it by first name, alphabetical order, not by cemetery, as the cemeteries listed, but how you research it is by the name, which saves so much time. You're not having to flip through every 81 cemetery. It's awesome. Love it. So I've given you what I call the appetizer and the main meal. Now I'd like to give you the dessert. This is my favorite part. This is what I am passionate about. I love doing. I get so excited. My husband can't figure it out. We got some information recently that I was just over the top excited one night, and I go into my husband and tell him, and he says, why are you so excited? I said, I love this stuff. I can't help it. But anyway, this is what I love. I love researching other people, not just my family. I love researching everybody's family, and I particularly like researching the dead ones. Those are my favorites. We receive many requests for help on finding information on a person's ancestry. I'd like to give you 2 examples of prominent men of Jacksonville and how we became involved in doing research on them. The first one is John J. OHara. He was born in 1877, died in 1952. He was a pioneer real estate developer here in the city of Jacksonville. He was on the city council from 1904 to 1912. He was an advocate for city improvements, and he had a brokerage firm that was in the Bisbee Building. How we got involved with this was we received an email from a man, and he says, I'm looking for information on John J. OHara. Can you help me? Well, I went through my resources there at the library and I couldn't find anything. So this is when I collaborate with the Jacksonville Historical Society, and I've done this on numerous occasions. When I can't find something, I go say, let's go dig and see what they've got. So Georgia Probonic, who's here tonight, she's also a member of our society. I got a hold of her and I said, can you find anything on Mr. Ahern? And she was able to give me some information. Yeah. Another one of our researchers, who's our best researcher at SGS, if she can't find it, I say nobody can find it. She provided this article for me. Guess what newspaper it was in? It wasn't the Times Union. This was a newspaper article of the marriage of John J. Ahern to Isabel Boston in a newspaper in Detroit, Michigan. Wow. See how hard you have to dig sometimes and where you have to go? I am working right now. I have put in a request with City Hall. They do have a research section. I went online. I have not been able to find a lot of information on this man. So I have requested any documentations or pictures they have of him while he was a city councilman. I'm waiting for their reply. Again, this is the Bisbee Building. What's significant about this? He had his office there, but also this is one of two of the first high-rises that were built in the city of Jacksonville. The Inquirer that sent me the email provided the information that Mr. Ahern was one of the first real estate brokers in this city, as I said, and this is where he had his office. He had his office in several locations, but the last few years that he practiced, it was in the Bisbee Building. After several emails back and forth, he was asking questions. I was shooting him what I had found and what other people had found for me. I thought, this man is really interested in Mr. Ahern. What is the connection? So I also we found Mr. Ahern's obituary, and then I realized that he had been married twice, and it was listed in his obituary, his first wife Isabel, his second wife May. Well, then I thought, wait a minute. The burning question was, what happened to Isabel? Yep. You know, I just can't help it. I don't let any. They'd only been married for less than 5 years. And I thought, how sad. Something must have happened. What was it? So her gravestone gives the death year is 1914. But her death certificate states that she died January the 5th, 1915. But the doctor did not give a date on the certificate for his signature. So we still don't know for sure. We're going to have to do more research. But the person that was asking the questions, I finally sent 2 questions to him. 1, are you in this family? And 2, do you know what happened to Isabel? So he sent me an email back quite lengthily, and he says, Carol, where do I begin? Nothing at the beginning. So he told me that Mr. Ahern was his grandfather. And he had some information, but not a lot, and he was researching and needed help. Mr. Ahern, after his first wife died, went up north and hired a governess to come down and take care of the child that had been born to him and Isabel. That lady's name was May. She took care of that child, and then sometime later, John Ahern and May married. They had 4 more children. Their only surviving child is Gerald's mother. She lives in South Florida. Mr. John J. Ahern was a very successful man in Jacksonville in the early 1900s, yet there is still so much information that we do not know about him. The next person I want to talk to you about is another prominent citizen of this city, and that's William E. Boone. He was born in 1853 and he died in 1938. He was instrumental in owning a train steam engine rental company, Boone Terminal, which is here in Jacksonville. He was a real estate investor. And if any of you know anything about this city and have ever been to Avondale in Riverside area, you have probably passed Boones Park. The research came in a really odd way with this one. A gentleman walked into our library one day with this baby book in his hand. And he said, I've come in possession of this book, but I'm not, to my knowledge, related to anyone in this book. He knew it was very old and felt it needed to go to the descendants, but did not know how to track them down. And he asked if we would try to locate a living family member. For us at the library, this was just phenomenal. It was a great find. This doesn't happen often. But we were so amazed that this book survived. It wasn't in a family member's hands. It was in somebody else's hands. And it had survived. It was not thrown away. You know, our kids are going through half of what we own, if not 3/4 of it out the door.
Yeah.
They don't care, you know, but somebody cared enough to preserve this book and bring it to us. We brought it to the right people. So it didn't get thrown away, it was preserved. This baby book is the book of Edward Boone OHara. The first family name we researched was, of course, this last name, OHara. But the middle name struck a chord with the person that was doing the research, and she's one of our best researchers. She's here tonight. She spent a lot of time when she was young going to elementary school at Boones Park. So when she saw that name, the burning question to her was, could this baby possibly be related to the Boone from Boones Park? This is what Elena and I, who did all this research, jokingly called, we're going down that rabbit hole. We start with one surname and then we're jumping to the next one, trying to find the full history. This is a picture of little baby Edward, which is not a baby there, and his sister Susan, and in the middle is their grandfather, William E. Boone. Edward's parents were Edward Conrad OHara and Nelly Boone OHara. This book contains many family photos as well as the obituary for Edward's maternal grandmother, Susan Boone. This is a picture of the house that they lived in. William Boone gave this house to his daughter and her husband as a wedding gift. This photo was also in the baby book. This is a recent photo of this same house as it looks today in the Avondale Riverside area. This home remained in the family for over 100 years. It is not owned by a family member at the present time. This is a picture of Nelly Boone OHara, the mother of Edward that wrote this baby book. Nelly, her son, as I said, was Edward Boone OHara. Nelly was born on the 28th of August in 1888 and died on 13 October 1989. Nelly was 101 years old when she passed away. She was interviewed by the Times Union newspaper later in her life, and this is a picture from that interview in the article. She was interviewed about the Great Fire of 1901. This article was published in the book, The Great Fire of 1901, by Bill Foley and Wayne W. Wood. This is a picture of Boones Park. William E. Boone sold this property to the city of Jacksonville for $100, with the stipulation that it always remain a public park and or a public playground for the use and enjoyment of the general public, and that it be named Boones Park and no other name or designation. And the deed was written in 1926. William E. Boone was a very successful citizen of Jacksonville. He repaired trains, steam engines, and rented them to turpentine companies and other companies. This operation was located at Boone Terminal. He also owned multiple pieces of property in Duval and surrounding counties. This we find out by looking through deeds. Mr. Boone also assisted in the development of Jacksonville by purchasing several municipal bonds. And I have a little surprise for people. It was a great surprise to me. We have been trying to get a hold of a family member for some time, but COVID and many things happened to us and we didn't get there. This past Saturday, I had the name and a phone number, and I made a phone call. And I got the right person, and I'm so glad. I would like to introduce to you the granddaughter of Edward Boone OHara. She's here with us tonight, and her mother, her name is Elizabeth OHara, and her mother's Susan. And I would appreciate if you'd come up on stage. And I'd also like to ask Elena Masters to come up. She's the one that did most of the research on this Boone family. So I have a surprise for everybody. Exciting it is to research other people. It is. So I would really invite any of you to come to our library and see our collection. We're always looking for volunteers. We're a fun group. We all have a great time. We help each other out. We research together, and we all get involved. I appreciate so much you listening to my program tonight, and I hope you'll come see us. Thank you.
Don't go too far. There may be a few questions here.
All right, I'm open.
Well, who says dead people tell no tales? There are a wealth of stories to be unpacked from the generations, the stories, the records, the hints, the threads of the lives of the people who came before us. Carol mentioned cemetery research and research into cemetery records. And that's my cue to call attention to and recognize a couple of special guests who are present this evening. Mike Ondina, would you stand up, please? Mike and John Donovan. Mike is the general manager of Evergreen Cemetery on North Main Street in Jacksonville. John is the president of the Evergreen Association. Do I have that title right? So Evergreen Cemetery is the final resting place of, if I have the math right, over 90,000 people. And it is a place where you can find evidence of the lives of some of Jacksonville's most influential citizens. And I think Carol would probably agree with me when I say, looking at the cemetery records themselves can be stimulating, informative, really unpack a lot of surprises, but my own experience is that there is no substitute for physically visiting the cemetery, visiting the burial site, seeing the proximity of the markers of the departed to the other people who their survivors chose to bury close to them, or in some cases, chose not to bury close to them. It really can be a revelation. And the story of how I came to that took place at Evergreen. I won't bore you with all of it this evening because it's Carol's time to take questions, but it is inspiring and suggestive of some of the revelations that can come to us from this sort of research. Does anyone have any questions or comments about Carol's presentation? Thanks to John and Mike for being here, by the way.
I have something I can say. Speaking of that, and the gentlemen are here from Evergreen, I would like to tell you that the OHara family is buried in Evergreen, which I know you know. The OHaras are buried in Evergreen. I can tell you that too. I have not personally seen the OHaras' graves, but I have found them a grave, findagrave.com. But I can tell you I have been to see the OHara, and it's very impressive. We actually have a photo of it. I didn't show it tonight, but that's where they're both buried. That's a very historical cemetery. We took a tour of it. There's so much information there. Both of these families are buried in the St. Mary's section of Evergreen Cemetery, so if you ever go out there and you want to look for them. But that's a wonderful cemetery, a lot of history there. Yes, ma'am.
There's a lot of Ahern families at Jacksonville Beach.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, is that the same family? Because there's been property, real estate companies, different things owned by Aherns.
Yes, ma'am, it is. John J. Ahern owned a home in Jacks Beach. Matter of fact, that's where he was living when he died, and I thought I'd found it when I Googled the address, and it popped up this big, beautiful two-story house, and I got excited again. And then I looked, because my son is in real estate, and I started looking at all this, because, oh, this house was built in the early 2000s. Wrong house, right property, right land. There is a street in Jacks Beach named John J. Ahern Boulevard. That was named after our John Jay's son. He was a pilot in World War II and was killed in 1944 in England. And that is why that road is named after him in Jacks Beach. Thank you for asking that.
Sure.
Anyone else? Yes.
I appreciate your comment about these little private cemeteries on private land, because one of my brothers bought 40 acres a couple years ago. This is in Virginia, and it came with a little cemetery in the front yard, but he does take care of it, and the families have been known to come and visit it. But I thought it was kind of interesting.
Oh, that's wonderful. Part of my family, I told you, I'm from Alabama, and they're in rural, they were farmers. And one section of my family is in a cemetery called the Ernest Cemetery. My grandfather was an Ernest. And that cemetery sits on a hill, and it's a family plot. But there is a house up there, and it was taken away by a tornado many years ago. And the man that owns that property where the house is chained off the road. It is a dirt road, it goes up a hill. When I go to visit my great-grandparents' graves, I literally have to climb, and I'm short, a chain across a fence in order to climb that hill to get to that cemetery. And I'm sure people from Evergreen can vouch for this. That is illegal. You should be able to always get into a cemetery. Those are public, even if it's a private cemetery, it's illegal not to give access to the descendants of those people. Yes, Susan?
How does someone access the names that were collected, the database
Of those 81 cemeteries, you can email us, or you can call us at the society because we have that list. We have in one of our back rooms binders on all those cemeteries, and there's a wealth of information in there. It's not just the headstone information, there's a lot of information. And it's copies of what was given to the city council at that time on all those cemeteries. So you're welcome to come and just browse through that, or if there's a particular name that you're looking for in Duval County, but you do not know where they're buried, you can always ask us that question and we'll look it up for you. Sometimes we don't have it. We do not have Evergreen. Evergreen wasn't neglected and abandoned, so it was not on the list. So when we talk about these cemeteries, we're not talking about every single cemetery in Duval County. We're talking about neglected and abandoned. So many times I will get a question. Matter of fact, just recently I got a question from someone who was looking for the person that had passed away, and they were not in any of our 81. And guess where I referred them to? My first place is Evergreen. It is a very old cemetery, and chances are that a lot of times that's where they'll find their loved ones. Anything else? Thank you. I appreciate your time.
I'm sure she'll stick around for a minute if any of you would like to chat with her. In December, this National Register Landmarks Church Sanctuary, Old St. Andrews, will turn into the space for Jacksonville's 20th annual Gingerbread House Extravaganza, a beloved Jacksonville tradition. We encourage you all to make plans to visit, as so many families, thousands do each December here. But there are programs yet to come between now and then in this bicentennial year. So stay tuned, be a member of the Jacksonville Historical Society, visit us at www.jackshistory.org, and thank you all very much for turning out this evening. Glad to see you.